Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu-alaikum. Ji-ayanu, Pukhair-agale, Ni-hao, Chunashumme, Washmale. Ohio Gonzaimas, Guten Morgen, Hola, Bonjour, Privyet, Kaifahal, Halashuma Chatore, Ahlan Vasal, Marhaba, Buna, Mucho, Gracias, Fabio, Balli Kare Aya, Hoshgal, Din, and Ayosayo. Huyamora, Chivato, Chihal, Yod, Kalimera, and thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to PTV World. You're certainly watching World this morning alongside my very well-learned colleague who happens to be Ms. Haja Satti. I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan, and we hope and pray, ladies and gentlemen, that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well and that you're ready to get started with us. But first things first, hello Haja, assalamu alaikum. How are you doing today?
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much, Jazakallah khair, for introducing me. So it's a fine, I think, morning in Islamabad, especially considering the fact that there was a warning by the Met Office that we are going to see some very hot weather entering Pakistan, especially coming from the south of the country towards the north. And certainly we witnessed a very springy, cool, pleasant April. But I think now that the season is over and we are finally transitioning into summers, because I got a flu, and that is the sign of the changing seasonality of the nature. But having said, so Shahzad, so I was reading a very interesting news. So you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something, and I found it really interesting. Do you remember that that we did a show on climate change, and there was this gentleman who wanted to advocate about La Nina and Our Nina. Do you remember that? And then there was and then there was a backlash, by our programming head as well, that hey, are you guys ignorant and whatnot. Now, I would want, people who actually advocate for climate change to kind of make us understand this phenomena that it's already May and it's cold. It's not really that warm or hot as well.
Yes.
So I think, do you think that it is because of the fact that it's climate change? Because in January or February, people started to say, hey, you know what, summer, we are expecting summers earlier.
Yes.
And now, while I was actually going through my application as well, and I saw that, I think for the next 4 days, it's going to be cloudy again.
Oh, really?
So imagine if that's the kind of May we're going to have. Do you think that we will be expecting summer somewhere in October and September?
Yeah, so Shahzad, we really don't know how the weather is acting, because for the past few years, we saw this trend where the summers were expanding and winter was shrinking, and we didn't saw that same sort of coldness creeping in as it used to be. But then again, this year it was changed because weather pattern did not follow as that of same weather, right? So obviously we really don't know how the future is going to be, especially when it concerns to climate change. But obviously climate change is real, and we in Pakistan can feel the effects of that. But having said so, we will save this debate for some other day. I was going through very interesting news on The Guardian, and especially in the UK, there were healthcare professionals who came out against the development of the artificial intelligence, and they said we need to halt its development and make sure that there is an ethical conduct of it's out there, because it's going to have a lot of physical healthcare implications on the people. We already saw there's this debate, especially the Google, the godfather of the AI, the Google stepped down because he said that we need to have ethical procedures first develop about how we need to progress with the artificial intelligence, because a lot of times, Shahzad, we see that the artificial intelligence misrepresent reality with their very deep fakes, right?
True.
And it's very difficult to, with the bare and naked eye, to differentiate it, because it's very real. That is why it's very deep fake, right? And we have seen how that images, they are computer generated. They can create a pandemic of, I would say, misinformation, disinformation, and that too generated by the computer. So if someone is propagating that, we can blame that person, right? But when the computer is doing that, who are we going to blame that? This is the ethical dilemma.
I think we're going to blame the person who actually wrote that algorithm, So I think that's where it's going to go down.
But what if we have a different intention behind it, right?
I mean, we certainly know how people have different intentions, and people can judge. But while we speak about it, Haja, I'm going to stick with that point which I made the other day, and that is that, whenever there's newer technology coming in, there's always apprehension, there's always backlash.
Of course.
I mean, imagine that, when the cars came into being, everybody thought about, the people who were actually riding the horse carts. They said that, okay, so now how do you think that they're going to earn as well? And we saw that, how transportation actually was changed in no time, where people were able to conduct their businesses and everything was superb. But while we talk about artificial intelligence, I think I'm going to agree with you that we really need to have this ethical framework out there.
Of course.
Now, imagine just the other day, AI actually produced pictures of Karachi and they were horrible. And you know, they weren't really even depicting the true picture of Karachi. Just the other day, I saw these pictures generated by artificial intelligence where
Especially
Biden
nowadays,
and Mr. Trump are friends, and you know, they were going bowling, and you know, they were playing golf together and whatnot. You know, so it's not even close to reality. So I think it gives us more responsibility. It puts more responsibility on our shoulders to kind of authenticate. And why do I say so? And that's where I see that, you know, that the most harm lies, and it's because of the fact that we people are not in a habit of researching and looking forward and finding facts. And I think that will be essential for people out there to find facts in the first place and then kind of resonate, may it be on social media platforms or anywhere. So please make sure, if you are using such technology, ladies and gentlemen, if it's at your disposal, please make sure that you use it wisely and that you do not overuse. Because just yesterday I was sitting with my father-in-law, because my mother-in-law was leaving for States, you know, her brother lives over there, no other reason. So what happened was, and then, you know, I went to my father-in-law because every morning he will send us a good morning message. And it's almost the same every day. So I was like, why don't you be creative? He's like, you know, what do you want me to write? I'm like, okay, wait, let me help you. So I went on to my AI bot and I was like, okay, you know, write me a good morning emotional message, and it wrote an emotional and a good morning, wonderful, positive vibe message. And then, you know what my father-in-law said? He said that, why don't you screenshot it and send it to me? So I think for people to use it, I think it's brilliant. But my take on this is that, you know, kids who are actually not past the university or who are not graduates as of now shouldn't really be using it, because it will kind of have that, it will restrict you to kind of have those creative abilities in writing, reading, and whatsoever. We have gone past that phase, so I think we can pretty much use it. We can have that strike a balance, because I think I'm going to write the same message as well, just write the AI robot. I think so. People, please make sure that you use your abilities at 100% and only then seek for help when you find no other way. And even then, you know, call out to Allah.
That's very true. But this reminds me of a very important point, because you were mulling over this fact that people don't do enough research, right? And that capability has been furthermore restricted, or I would say disrupted, by the social networking sites, because they are very picture oriented and they focus on really short words. The captions are very, very short. And that has also damaged our attention span a lot, right? And that is why a lot of people who are into the book reading, who are into the researching, or who are into reading long format text out there, they're really criticizing social networking sites, because they say they really don't generate that sort of a long format text or long format what do you call the literature, because that has shrink their ability. And obviously the next generation, I could see the effects of that, because I remember when I was a student, we were very passionate about reading, we were very passionate about researching into the PDFs. But now I am an educator, and when I see that my students are copy pasting from the AI chatbots and then presenting it to me even without changing a single bit of it, I am saying, oh my God, their intellectual capability is so much restricted, because they wouldn't even go and bother to change some aspects of it, right, to make it even more presentable. They wouldn't even bother that, right? And this is where their intellectual capability will eventually rust and vanish, because they're not using that capability.
And
right?
you know, that's why we have these memes circulating on social media where, you know, it's 8:59 and at 9 a.m. you're supposed to, you know, kind of give your presentation to the teacher, and you know, at 8:59 the guy is actually chilling just because they had a chat bot. But while we speak of this, I think that the only problem with such sort of literature is because of the fact that, you know, whenever my wife sends me a longer message, I already know that, you know, there's something wrong. But she wants a longer reply, you know, for that longer message. And obviously, you know,
so do you put the effort of giving that longer reply?
I mean,
or you find face-to-face
partially
interaction
you agree
more?
to it, partially you disagree with it, and then you write, okay, you know, if I'm going to write a longer one, then there's another longer message which is going to come in. So, you know, just to avoid that. But ladies and gentlemen, having said so, you know, let's move on towards the soft stories, what's happening in the country and outside the globe. Let's take a good look.
Right. So Prime Minister Mia Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif has warned anti-state elements and terrorists, of course, to refrain from implementing their nefarious designs to destabilize the country. Addressing the nation, Prime Minister said those who would take law into their hands through carrying out miscreant activities will be dealt accordingly, according to the law and the Constitution. He also said safeguarding the Constitution and the country is a prime responsibility, and we would foil the evil designs of the terrorists, that too with the help and the cooperation of the nation. And I think those were very reassuring words coming from the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Last night, as I saw him delivering this address, he was trying to restore and seek that stability that Pakistan badly needs, right? And Shehzad and I were reflecting on that I mean, it reflects really, really badly about what's going on the streets, especially with the hooliganism, with the vandalism that is going on, and that is what our Prime Minister also reiterated in the first place, that people need to prevent all of these mobsters into implementing their nefarious designs, and which is to destabilize the country, right? And obviously this is the time we as a nation should come forward and think about how do we want to represent ourselves, especially how do we want other people to perceive us, or how do we want to perceive ourselves in the first place, because this is not the sort of the image you would want to give to the outsiders, right? So
Exactly, and Hajar, in addition to that, it actually looks like as if there's only one way out, and and that's not the case. Whenever we are to kind of speak about where democracy prevails, I think it's about sitting down, discussing, being on the table, talking about it. And I would love to admire the humble efforts of our Foreign Minister, Mr. Bilal Bhutto, as well, the way he actually spoke while he was in India as well, and he really needs to be kind of applauded as well, because he really kind of gave that image to the world of Pakistan, which we feel we are, and I think that's how we really need to go about it. But further moving on, ladies and gentlemen, what we really need to realize as Pakistanis, that all of those people who might be from any law enforcing agencies, they are as much Pakistanis as we are. They're supposed to do a job, and they're doing it legally, and I think that's what matters, which is why I'm going to move on to the next one and then come back with what we wanted to say. So Pakistan Army has warned that any further attack on all the law enforcement agencies, including the armed forces, military and state installations and properties, will be retaliated strongly, and it should be. I must admit, in a press release, the Inter-Services Public Relations said that the armed forces, in the greater interest of Pakistan, demonstrated restraint with utmost patience and tolerance, despite provocation from the gang hell-bent to push Pakistan into civil war. It said these goons will be responsible in case of any retaliation. It said that no one will be allowed to indict people and take law into hands. And that's how it needs to be. I think I would want to say to the people of Pakistan directly that, what are you thinking? What are you trying to do with your own country, and that too with your own hands? Imagine what you did to Radio Pakistan in Peshawar. Imagine what people have done to Metro Bus in Karachi. Imagine what people are doing out there. You're actually trying to demolish Pakistan with your own hands, and don't you know where we are as of now? Don't you think that that a lot of money will be required again to build back a stronger and a better infrastructure over and over again? We cannot go through this, and we cannot afford to do this. And that's where, Hajar, I wanted to give you this example that I think it was probably 7 or 8 years ago that I was in Thailand, and there was a protest which was going on. I was in Bangkok, and I haven't seen such a peaceful protest ever in my life. So imagine what people did was that they took to the streets, parked their cars on the street, and went back home. That's it. That was a protest. And that was the most peaceful protest. And, if the government had to clear those roads, they obviously had to kind of listen. But, ladies and gentlemen, I think that we really need to kind of, number one, I think we need more education. We need more civic sense, and we really need to do that. And I think that the leadership of any political party needs to think about it, that you cannot indict violence into your voters. You cannot tell them to go and attack. There are all of those WhatsApp calls are circulating on all sorts of different TV channels and news channels as well, where people have been calling, from those political parties and telling their, workers to kind of come to at a certain place as well. And this shouldn't really be happening. But ladies and gentlemen, as of now, my producer just spoke in my ear, and she said that, we have a traffic alert update, and that is that all the roads out there are open up, so please make sure that if you were supposed to go to office, do not take advantage of it. Make sure that you go to your workplace. It's really important, and that's how we strive for excellence, and that's how we work for the country. And even while, we came to our workplace just fine. I think it was better than any other day.
Yes, it was fine, and I think that there was very less congestion on the traffic, so it was a really nice commute. And Shehzad, one thing that I would like to add here, thank you so much for putting it out there, when you said that we need to desist from all of this violence, because in political science, there's this philosophy that you have a contract, the public, the people have a contract with those who are governing them. This is called the social contract. So people are going to respect the government, and in return, the government will protect their lives, will they protect their properties, etc., right? And the government and the state has this monopoly over the violence, and that is why there is a law out there, right? So if you feel that there is some injustice being committed out there, you can always go and approach the law, and the law will make sure that there is justice which is meted out to you, right? It is not the responsibility of the public to take the law into their hands, and with whatever demented version of that justice is there, this is not going to happen. So only state has the monopoly over the violence. This is the philosophy, this is the philosophy of the political science, which is very much prevalent in the modern conception of the nation state system, right? So please do not take the law into your hands out there. Do not burn the public properties out there. There are so many people who use the metro buses. It's very costly, and obviously it's very clean and green in that terms. But when you disrupt all of this public property, when you are burning the metro buses out there, it is disrupting the lives of the common man, and especially that too in the environment of the global inflation out there, which is big respite to them, right?
And Hajar, in addition to that, I think what people really need to consider over here is that imagine that, you know, a father, a brother, a husband, a sister, a mother, they used to take that bus, use that bus every single day to make sure that they're going to reach to work. Now imagine what are they going to do, what's going to happen with them. And while we speak of it, I think there's one more announcement which I need to make, and people really need to be clear on this as well, and that is that we got this statement which was released by Punjab Police, and ladies and gentlemen, that for all of those people who've been involved in vandalism and hooligans out there on the streets as well, very sorry. Imagine that they have said it, that, you know, that obviously we have smart cities cameras everywhere. They're not going to issue any character certificates for all of those people. You will have issues or trouble with getting a visa anywhere you want to go. So please make sure that you understand this. And I'm going to say it in Urdu as well. मेरे जितने भी पाकिस्तानी बहन भाई हैं, मेरी आपसे दरख्वास्त है कि ये अपने ही मुल्क को जलाने से, इसको बर्बाद करने से, इसमें तबाही मचाने से हम कहीं पे भी नहीं पहुंचेंगे। अगर हम कहते हैं कि हम एक डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्री हैं, हमें बैठ के सुकून से बात करनी चाहिए। द लॉ विल टेक इट्स कोर्स एंड इट शुड टेक इट्स कोर्स एज वेल। और जितने भी लोग हैं जिनको ये लग रहा है, मैं उनके वालिदैन से भी दरख्वास्त करूँगा कि आप अपने बच्चों को समझाएं। आजकल हर जगह कैमराज हैं, पंजाब पुलिस की तरफ से स्टेटमेंट आ चुकी है कि ना इन बच्चों को कभी करेक्टर सर्टिफिकेट मिलेंगे, ना इन बच्चों को वीज़े लगेंगे, क्योंकि जब आपको करेक्टर सर्टिफिकेट नहीं मिलेंगे, वीज़े के साथ बड़ा इशू आएगा। तो आप अपनी फ्यूचर की जितनी अच्छी पॉसिबिलिटीज़ हैं, खुद अपने हाथों से उनको आग लगा रहे हैं। आप ये ना सोचें कि आपने किसी बस को आग लगा दी, आप ये ना सोचें कि आपने किसी पुलिस वैन को आग लगा दी, आप ये सोचें कि आपने अपने फ्यूचर को आग लगा दी। एंड लेडीज एंड जेंटलमैन, दैट्स समथिंग व्हिच वी विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट टुडे, because we have the right person over here inside the studios, and we're very lucky that, you know, considering how things are outside, he was able to kind of you know, take our invitation and then respond to it. And whenever he's on television or off television, looks as smart as he's looking today, always shining bright like a diamond. Ladies and gentlemen, we're very lucky that we've been joined by somebody who happens to be advocate, Supreme Court. He is Mr. Hafiz Ahsan Khokhar Sahab. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. How are you feeling today?
So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So always so dapper, so charming, mashallah, always on point. I think there are very fewer advocates which I have seen so good looking.
So it may be I'm representing the whole legal community.
So
I should be more.
So do you feel the pressure of that? Yes. Oh, that's wonderful, and I think you are fulfilling that pressure very nicely, sir. So we would like to start off by asking you. So it's a democratic tradition of protesting, but right, what we see right now, the situation in the country is not up to the mark at all, right? So especially in your legal terms, how would you define a peaceful protest, especially in a democratic tradition?
And what the Constitution allows us?
The Constitution, Shahzad, is very much clear. There are certain provisions which we may call as a fundamental rights for a citizen of Pakistan, which Constitution grants to a citizen of Pakistan, either he lives in Pakistan or outside Pakistan. And the first fundamental right is the right to form an association, and then they have the Constitution says the freedom of expression. But in both situations, the Constitution says that they are subject to the certain laws and limitations. So according to the Constitution of Pakistan, and we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Constitution, and we believe that this Constitution has the certain areas and functions and giving a good social contract between the state and the citizen of Pakistan. And in this particular scenario, the Constitution says that you have a right to express yourself whichever you want, but it has to be within certain limitations, laws and regulations. Where you have a right, there are certain obligations upon you and about your conduct. if you exceed your limits to the law, then there is a consequences also prescribed in the law. And as well, you have a right to form an association, you can join a political party, you can go over there, but simultaneously you have a right to be in a way that no such violation is committed, and you are not being involved as in certain areas where the law says that enough is enough and you have crossing your limits. So, this is a good constitution, but now in the particular scenario you have made a very good opening about all the areas you try to cover, the artificial intelligence, the rule of law, and more importantly the assets of Pakistan. And we believe Pakistan is our country, we believe our future lies with Pakistan. We believe that there is a democracy in Pakistan, we believe there is a constitution and there are courts in Pakistan. So, we go by book and we go by the decisions or the observations by the Supreme Court. If you have a problem against the government and if you have a problem against the system, you can go to the court, and the courts are very active on that, and they are deciding the issues. But since for the last 1 year there is a political and a constitutional crisis in Pakistan from the vote of no confidence against the former Prime Minister, and it keeps continuing. But now there are a few months for the next election, and even the Supreme Court has reserved the judgment about the holdings of the election in Punjab. So, all the political parties whosoever, and particularly the opposition parties, they should wait the decisions of the Supreme Court, and if they want to protest against the government policies, or if they think there are certain violations by the government institutions, so they need to be in a quiet way, they need to go, they have a right to protest, but this protest must be in a way that it should not in a way hurdles the movement of the citizens of Pakistan. It should not in a way to destroy the buildings.
That's
it should
very
not
true,
in a way,
and we've also spoken against this hooliganism and vandalism. So you,
it is not acceptable in every society.
That's very true. So you alluded to the social contract, and I think I also spoke about it. And obviously, in political philosophy, in political science, there's this philosophy that the monopoly over the violence resides with the state, right? There's a particular philosophy behind it, because as Shahzad mentioned, if you see, I was watching this report in the DW on Germany, in which there was some feminist protests going on, and actually the report was about because of that feminist protests, and they were protesting against the representation of the women in the society in general, in the corporate sector. So they have erected some really funny bathrooms out there which had that Indian sort of toilet, and they said that it was an innovation. It was not an innovation. We have those toilets here in Pakistan too for quite some time.
It was innovation back in those days.
Yes, yes. So I think for them it's a big innovation, but that was a very peaceful protest, right? And so what happens when this monopoly over the violence does not reside with the state, and what happens when people start to take the law into their hands? Obviously, we want you to contemplate and deliberate over this philosophy that state
according
has
to the law.
Yes, only state has the
two
authority.
things are very important. One important thing is that now we have the access of information, and we can visit the protest, and we can see the protest either in the developed countries or in the developing countries. But what is going on in Pakistan, if you have a protest, I think the people who are participating in the press, they think that they should react in a way that the action should make news in the media. But in this particular situation, that now we have the access of information, the media is there, the social media is very active. So, your point of view is well taken by the concerned authorities in and outside Pakistan. So, the most important thing would be that if you have a problem against the government, and like we are in Pakistan, the best thing is that you have a right to protest in a way. You make your gatherings, submit your plans or the proposals or the what you are trying to say it, and stick on it. This is your constitutional legal right, but don't exceed your limits in a way that you should destroy your building, you should interrupt the ambulances, you should
Yes.
disrupt on the roads, you should destroy the signals. So this is not acceptable in every society, and I must say that all the political parties and even the opposition party, their leaders are also saying and they are condemning what is going on in certain areas of Lahore.
Sir,
and in
I'm sorry,
Karachi.
but I'll have to stop you over here because that's exactly what I wanted to ask. Now, imagine that after the chairman Tariq Insaf was arrested, that's when they released a video on their platforms as well, where he was urging other people to come outside and be on the streets. Not that he categorically mentioned that they are supposed to lit buildings on fire, but there's another contribution to this, and that is that for all of those people who actually were going to contest elections on PTI tickets, they were the ones who were calling on WhatsApp to other people that, okay, we've reached this place, please come over here. So it was all planned, and we actually heard all of those audio calls as well. They're on every other television as well. Now, what I want you to is to let us know that for all of those people who've been out there, been a part of this, vandalism as well, destroying property, under what sections will they be booked, and do you think that there will be charges put up in place for the leadership of the party as well?
Shehzad, two things are very important. One is the leader has a right to call his workers to come out on the street. It is the constitutional, the right to give them that they can have a protest against the policies, or they can protest
But not
against
when
the government.
Section 144 is imposed, right?
This is the first area. The second area is that if the people come out from the street and there is a certain areas that where you are exceeding your limits and trying to
And
burn
they're
the
doing it
government
on
building
purpose.
and trying to burn the buildings and the government offices and the residences, this is not acceptable, and the law will take its own course. Now you are talking about the law. The law is very much clear that there are certain sections and certain legislation in Pakistan. Number one is there is an anti-terrorism law in Pakistan, and there is the Pakistan Penal Code as well. And on the third side, on the media side, there is a PIDA Act in Pakistan. If you violate the your limits on a social media, you can be booked by the FIA. Everyone has a right to file a complaint. Even the government has a right to file a complaint against someone if he violates or takes his liberty to in a way that infringe the rights and which may call as anti-state. So the law, in recent years the government is doing on that, but simultaneously it is also very important to have a restraint from the both sides. All the political parties, they should act, and you have rightly pointed out in opening that there should be a dialogue between the political parties for the political stability and economic stability in Pakistan. We need to have such a system in a way that every can participate in the election, and that election should be held in a way, in a very, very transparent and in a very acceptable way, that the country needs political stability. And if we go by these political instability, and definitely the political instability follows with the economic instability in Pakistan, and that is
That's
not
true.
affordable to a Pakistan which has more than 230 million population, and most of the population comprises of the young boys in Pakistan. We have a big force in Pakistan. We can't afford that our factories are closed. We can't afford that no foreign direct investment in Pakistan. We can't afford that we have a bad perception in Pakistan. And interestingly, I am saying on that 3-4 things are very important for any country to have a big investment in a country. One is it is a geological or a geographical the aspect. The second about is the resources, the third is the labor market, and the fourth is the market where the people who are living. And we have simultaneously have all the factors. But interestingly, the figures are very, in a blatant way,
yes.
that like our neighboring country, he has the ranking in the foreign direct investment in,
Yes.
if you say 190 countries, he is at in the top 5 countries, and we have at the number 92 in the countries. And they are, having the foreign direct investment in Pakistan, it's more than 84 billion in the last 2022 financial year, and it keeps going on. And we are less than the 2 billion in
Yes,
Pakistan.
but Hafiz Saab,
So
Yes, so I'm sorry for interjecting here, but Shahzad, I was listening to a conversation where it was mentioned about a Japanese author. So she wrote a book and she talked about that we have forgotten how to love. And she was talking in the context of we are living in a very narcissistic, hyper individualistic, liberal
That's
society.
true, यार अब होता ही नहीं है पता नहीं क्या
That's
वजह.
very true. And she talked about the concept of the selfie, right? And there's so many filters out there. So, and there's so many beautiful cameras coming out there. And it's all about, we do not know how to love ourselves.
मैं चाह रहा हूँ नहीं हो रहा, हो नहीं पा रहा.
But if we decontextualize her sayings and if we contextualize back in our society, do you think we've also forgotten how to love? Because you see, there's so many polarization out in the society. I mean, with the things they are going, I mean, we have forgotten how to love, truly love
from
ourselves.
that conversation now we're coming down to कि सर प्यार हो रहा है
हो रहा-
ये नहीं हो
नहीं,
रहा.
नहीं, there are certain studies on that,
Yes.
and these studies says that the 3-4 things are very important to come like this society. One is, I mean, you have enough resources, you have a security in your country, and then you have a transparent governance system in any
Kamil
country.
Iman.
Yeah.
Faith.
And in particular in Pakistan, we are a developing countries, we have certain issues in Pakistan, we have economic issues in Pakistan. The people are going for their butter and bread and they have a less time to think over it. And most importantly, our education system doesn't feed and doesn't say on that. If you go on the schools,
Yes.
it's like all the commercials, and if you compare with the Japanese school, they are more on the ethics, they are more on the system in a way that this country is yours, you need to behave and perform in a way that you should be respected, you give respects. And if you compare with the boys with the other countries, and all the countries who are developed countries, they need more emphasis on ethics, morality, and they're trying to build a student in a way that he should be more productive and participates in the national scenario. But in Pakistan, unfortunately, there are certain issues, and like the issue is the education is at the top, where the schools, in the government schools, I mean, it is, you can't see in a way. Earlier we have seen in the outside buildings, the certain narrative was written outside the walls of the high schools or the primary schools about the neki karna achhi baat hai, ikhlaq se pesh aana achhi baat hai, and there were certain
poetry of
quotations,
Iqbal
poetry,
used to be on the
Iqbal,
walls.
and ahadith of Hazur Akram
Exactly.
sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But now it's missing. You go on the private school, you will not see anything outside the walls of school. And when you have such an environment, it definitely attracts the children. And when he brought up, this is the problem.
And you always remember that, obviously, because
Yes.
back in the day when we used to go to the school, ladies and gentlemen, that's the sort of an environment, and every teacher would walk in,
Yeah.
would start in the name of Allah first of all, and then
Yes.
give us some guidance,
Yes.
so it was very holistic sort of education we were getting. We had parks and whatnot. We used to go
And
outside.
there was no commercial element.
Exactly,
There was
and
no
it was
commercial.
all about discipline. It
Yeah.
was all about the future generations of the country. I need to head out towards a short break, but ladies and gentlemen, that's specifically, this is something that we want to focus on when we come back after a short break, and that is that do you think that for all of that vandalism which we have been witnessing out on the streets these days is because of the fact that we're not as educated as we should be, or is it because of the fact that our education model is not holistic? Do you think that we lack civic sense? Do you think that we really do not have the basic morals? Imagine people taking out chicken korma out of somebody's place and being happy about it. I mean, it was so heart-wrenching, it was so heart-reckoning for me that imagine that the state people are in, they're not even leaving behind a bottle of soda, they're not leaving behind a peacock from somebody's house. How can you do this, and you're out there on television. I mean, and when you're going to go back home, don't you think that your kids will think that, okay, if my father can do so, I can do so too? Don't you think that we should be living by example rather than creating such an example,
Yes.
which will create more havoc, unfortunately? And that's something which we will focus on with Khokar Saab over here inside the studios. We're heading out towards a short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. It's a good morning, indeed. Jalma, welcome back. Thank you very much for staying tuned, staying focused today. It is because of the fact that we believe that what we are discussing today in near future, inshallah, will actually bring a lot of good things to Pakistan.
Yes,
Haja, I know that you want to actually question Khoka Sahab over here. Khoka Sahab,
No,
ladies
I
and gentlemen,
wanted
is a
to
very
end.
mindful person,
Yes.
alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Very apolitical since he happens to be an advocate Supreme Court. I think they really need to be. I think there's a deeper message to what I actually said. But while we were talking about what's going on and how things really need to get better, political stability, economic stability and whatnot, we certainly wanted to talk about how we really still feel that there's a dire need to educate people on the right track,
Yes.
to make sure that they have more civic sense, that the education models need to be more holistic, because the way people of Pakistan have been out there on the streets, I don't think, I actually will never reckon it, and I think that that people really need to kind of learn some newer things with which they know that how to be a civilized citizen of a country.
Right, right. Thank you so much for saying that, Shahzad, because when we were having this conversation, especially in the break, so recently I just finished a book. It was about the modern Islamic political thought. It was written by a very good professor, Hamid Inayat, and he mentioned, especially in the Islamic tradition, that how anarchy is never accepted, even in the Islamic political tradition, even in the Islamic history, even in the Islamic civilization. And terrorism is a punishable offense even in the Islamic tradition, right? So there are laws out there in Islam that punish the people who create the anarchy out there, who disrupt the stability in the order. So we would also like to throw this question to our very worthy and esteemed guest there, especially in the light of Islam, since you are also expert in the legal or the jurisprudence. What does Islam says in this case, especially when people are out there, they are indulging in the vandalism, hooliganism? How do you make sure that you instill in them the Islamic teachings about do not create an anarchy in a state, and it's never acceptable?
In Islam, there is no acceptability about the anarchy.
Yes,
there is no
that's true.
acceptability in a way that you should challenge the state authority. There is no acceptability in Islam that while you are making in a way that you cross your limit, you exceed your legal rights and enter into a premises which ultimately says that it is the infringement of the right of the others and it is against the state. So there is no, and as well in the modern worlds, in every country there is a laws, and the law is there. You have a right, but simultaneously you have under certain legal obligations, and the legal obligation is, it is also your right as well, and it is an obligation to protect the property of the state, to protect the property of the private persons over there. If for the sake of argument that if you have a private property and someone is there to destroy the property, come over there, breach over there and destruct everything, and you are the victim, what you have in your mind about these things, and what you have in your mind about the rule of law, and what you have in mind, what you are expecting from a state or the state institutions, why they kept silent over it. So if you have a feeling about your property and your rights over there, so other persons, they have also a right over there. And most important thing is that while you have certain observations against the government, you have a right to protest, but this right of protest should not in a way that it gives a bad image not only for a country, but also in a certain way when the country is also in a crisis. The crisis is there is the economic crisis there, we have a problem in the receipt of funds, we have a problem in the dollars is also another issue, and you have seen for the last 2 days the dollar jumps up to 5 rupees and it's crossed about 290 against a dollar. So all things they need to be learned, and who is the burden lies on? The burden lies actually on the leaders of a political party. The situation sometime it is a political game in democracy. Sometimes you are a ruler and sometimes you are in opposition. There is no permanency. Only the permanency if we have a system like the emperor system, that once you are king, always you are king.
Monarch,
and then you have your children and their children, the grandchildren, they are there. But we have a country, we have a constitution, there are a certain over thing, the parliament has a tenure, it is going to end in this September over there. So we are in the April, and simultaneously the government is also under the obligation that they should respect the demands of a political party. If they say that if the chief minister are dissolving the assembly and they dissolved, the elections are to be held within 90 days. So, in the last 1 year starts from the April to 2022, everyone in Pakistan tries to deviate the constitution, and when to try to deviate the constitution, either you are in the opposition or in the government, the problems ultimately would be faced by a citizen, a common citizen in Pakistan, and by the image of Pakistan. If you don't have money, if you don't have utilize your resources in Pakistan, and like Pakistan, we have we fall in the 5 top most populations countries in the world. So, it is very difficult to have such scenarios on the TV and to have such demands on the streets.
And exactly, and thank you so much, sir, for setting the facts right as well, and I believe it's very essential. But at this point of time, you know, I'm just like a normal, ordinary Pakistani, I'm going to share my thought process as well. And my thought process is that imagine that, you know, for a political party to be in rule for more than 3 years and 8 months, right? Now, all of a sudden, you know, whatever they have to say, they have to blame another political party, and that's how the political...
Shahzad, no, democracy...
Sir, let me finish, let me finish. You know, this is not what I'm targeting. What I'm trying to say over here is that everybody needs to kind of undertake or consider the strategies released by a political party to uplift the country or its economy or political stability or foreign direct investment. I think having said so, nobody has actually spoken about it, that okay, this will be our strategy if the election is going to take place, and that's how we're going to bring Pakistan peace, tranquility, a lot of investment, and you know, the foreign reserves are going to increase. Imagine that just one person, you know, commenting it on his charisma. I mean, obviously that's God gifted as well. People cannot just be blindfolded by that charisma. People need to understand, the people of Pakistan, that, you know, and make better choices. And while we speak of it, sir, this is one thing which I wanted to focus on, that we need to educate Pakistani people. We need to educate our youngsters. We need to give them that civic sense. And how do you think we can do that?
Shahzad, there are so many factors. One is the very important factor is that if we have a constitution, and the constitution have the certain institutions and they have a framework, so everyone should abide by the constitution, what the constitution says. If we believe on the democracy says if you have a majority in the parliament, you have a right to rule, and if you lose the majority, you don't have a right to rule the country, and this is the another party who has a right to rule. So, if you are saying as a former prime minister or whosoever would be, if you lost the majority, that I should not be ousted, so there is a mechanism, right or wrong. If someone adopts the mechanism, and that mechanism was upheld even by the Supreme Court of Pakistan, but that start from for the last 1 year. Now, coming on the second point is that unfortunately, that Pakistan among the few Islamic countries where there is a democracy. If you see the right and left, there is no such democracy what we are enjoying in Pakistan. So, this is also a blessing for the people of Pakistan, but at the same time, it is also important for the political parties that they should train their political workers. They should ask them that if we are in power, we should deliver for the country, and if we don't in power, then we have if we have protest against them, and the opposition the right to protest. I mean, this is the opposition has a role to oversight in a way that they should speak on the floor of the houses, if either they are in the National Assembly or the Provincial Assembly, or even they have a right to protest, because in every democratic country and where there is a democracy, the people have more expectations from the opposition side, because they are there to agitate and to present their stance what the government is, if not doing well for the citizens or for the country. But at the most important thing now is that these political leaders, if they are in opposition, they should not make threatening remarks against the state institution. They should not threatening remarks against.
There's always a limit to exercise your right, right?
Constitutional issues. And what now I keep saying, and I keep writing on this particular respect, that we live in subcontinent and we have the history, and the history says that we have to some extent the intolerance in our political sides. If someone in power and he has crossed the 2 years entering into 3 years and now coming into the 4 years, then there is a problem, consistent problem since 1947, start from the Liaquat Ali Khan and then for the last Prime Minister. So, the Parliament should also work on it, that there should be a minimum time for the tenure of a government in Pakistan. If later on, if we stable on that and we have enough constitutional conventions and the tolerance in society, and we build in a way that the people are more educated, we invest our human resources, then might be the tenure of the 5 years is a good tenure, but otherwise the 3 years tenure should be for the National Assembly and should be for the provincial assemblies. So, the people and the political parties think that if they are not better, then there after 3 years there is an election.
And I guess obviously, you know, the Parliament gets to decide that as well, but thank you so much.
We have a right.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
and we are exercising our right within the limitations as well.
Within the limitations of law and in a
freedom
more
of speech
in a more peaceful way. In a more peaceful.
Thank you so much, Khokar Saab, for
Thank
sharing
you so
this.
much,
And
Khokar
I mean, certainly there needs to be more debate about this.
Yes,
you know,
of
obviously
course,
it's a recommendation by Khokar
course.
Saab. It's his personal view as well. And I believe that the governments really need to be a little longer. I think that, you know, because we really need to have one direction, or even if the period needs to be shortened, what I believe is that we really need to have one direction, that anybody who is on the chair actually follows that direction.
So there should
and
be
that there are no more U-turns.
There should be must, Shahzad, before conclusion, there must before there be the Charter of Education, the Charter of Governance, the Charter of Justice, the Charter of Economy, and the Charter of the attracting the foreign divestment in Pakistan, particularly in a way that we have more than 10 million overseas Pakistanis outside. This is a big asset for Pakistan. We need to utilize
and you've been
for
the
betterment of the country, both for the citizens and both for the state.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for
Thank you
joining
so
us.
much.
Ladies and gentlemen, very short in time. Haja, do you want to say something?
Yes, so I think we would like to reiterate that political parties need to train their workers, and like Khokar Saab mentioned, and they need to be more strained in their efforts in order to curb their political workers, and they should not wreak havoc everywhere they go. Right. So with that, we would like to say Allah Hafiz and bid you farewell.
1, 2, 3.
Good morning.